What happens when one of Hollywood's most adored actresses suddenly comes face to face with her toughest critic on live television? The tension was so heavy you could almost feel it hanging in the air. What began as a friendly, easy interview quickly turned into one of the most intense and unforgettable confrontations in talk show history. By the end of this story, you'll understand exactly why Sarah Jessica Parker made the shocking choice to storm off set, leaving millions of viewers around the world speechless. But before we get into the heart of this drama, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments what you think truly caused this unforgettable meltdown. The day had started like any other promotional appearance. Sarah Jessica Parker arrived at the studio looking stunning, her signature charm lighting up the room. She wore a flowing emerald green dress that shimmered under the lights, and her iconic curls were styled to perfection. She greeted the staff warmly before sitting down across from Andy Cohen, who welcomed her with his usual friendly grin. "Sarah Jessica Parker, welcome back," Andy said in his familiar upbeat tone. "It's always such a joy to have you on the show." "Thank you, Andy," Sarah replied with a soft smile, crossing her legs gracefully. "You know I always love being here." Andy leaned in slightly, his smile still in place but his tone shifting. "Before we talk about your new project, I have to ask, how do you feel about all the recent discussions online about your past work?" "People have been talking quite a bit." Sarah's smile flickered for the briefest moment. "Well, Andy," she began carefully, "I think every artist expects some form of criticism. It's just part of the business. But this goes beyond ordinary criticism, doesn't it?" Andy pressed, his words carrying a bit more weight now. "There have been some very harsh reviews of your performances over the years. Some critics have described your acting as overly theatrical, maybe even one-dimensional." The atmosphere in the studio began to shift. Sarah's posture straightened slightly, her expression tightening just enough for people to notice. "Andy," she said slowly, "I'm not sure what this line of questioning is about. Are we here to discuss my new work, or are we revisiting every critique I've ever received?" Andy chuckled, but there was a sharpness behind his laugh. "Come on, Sarah. You've been in this industry long enough to handle an honest question or two. I'm just curious, how do you respond to the idea that you've essentially been playing the same character for years? That Carrie Bradshaw was, in many ways, just Sarah Jessica Parker in designer shoes." "That's not a fair comment," Sarah shot back, her voice calm but edged with steel. "Every actor brings something of themselves into a role. That's what makes it real. The fact that Carrie connected with so many people across the world shows that we got something right." "But did you connect with the character?" Andy continued smoothly. "Or did you just play yourself? Because honestly, there are people in the business who believe you never really separated yourself from Carrie." Sarah's eyes flashed. "People in the business?" she said, her voice now sharper. "You mean gossip from people who've never done half of what I've done?" "Andy, I came here to discuss my work, not to defend myself against rumors." Andy leaned back, his smile faint but knowing. "It's just interesting how defensive you're getting," he said. "It feels very Carrie Bradshaw, drama, deflection, and turning everything back around." The audience began to murmur softly, sensing something shifting on stage. Sarah's jaw tightened as she sat up straighter. "Defensive? What's defensive about calling out disrespect? You've turned this interview into a performance. This isn't journalism, Andy, it's a setup." Andy raised his eyebrows theatrically. "A setup?" "Sarah, I'm only asking questions people have been wondering for years." "That's not an attack, it's accountability." "Accountability for what?" Sarah demanded, her tone rising. "For playing one of the most iconic characters in TV history? For creating something that inspired millions of women? For building a career I worked my entire life for?" Andy smirked, clearly pleased with her reaction. "Or maybe accountability for pushing an image that made shallow materialism seem empowering. Let's be honest, Carrie Bradshaw wasn't exactly a role model, was she?" Sarah's expression froze, then flushed deep red. She leaned forward, her voice trembling with fury. "How dare you reduce a character that meant so much to so many women into something so small? Carrie Bradshaw explored love, friendship, self-discovery, and ambition in a way no show ever had before." Andy tilted his head, smirking again. But did she really? Because to many viewers, she came across as self-centered, impulsive, and surrounded by people who constantly had to forgive her mistakes. That's not personal growth, Sarah. That's just glamorized dysfunction. The room went completely silent. Even the camera crew seemed frozen. Sarah stared at Andy for a long, tense moment. "You know what, Andy?" she said finally, her voice calm but quivering. "I've sat in this chair before, and I've always respected your show. But what you're doing right now isn't an interview, it's an ambush. And I'm not going to sit here while you try to tear down something that brought people happiness just to create a viral clip." Andy leaned forward, his tone smug. "Sarah, this isn't about a viral clip. It's just real conversation. If you can't handle honesty about your own work, maybe that says something about you." Sarah gave a bitter laugh. "Honesty? If this were an honest conversation, you'd acknowledge the cultural impact of that show. You'd talk about how it opened doors for women in television, the conversations it started. But you're not doing that. You're picking the ugliest takes you can find and pretending they're universal truths." "But those takes exist," Andy countered quickly. "Critics, insiders, even some of your own co-stars have hinted at similar issues. Doesn't that deserve discussion?" Sarah's eyes narrowed dangerously. "My co-stars? Are you really trying to drag my relationships with them into this? I'm not about to throw anyone under the bus to feed your ratings. I'm not asking you to," Andy said smoothly. "I'm just saying there were tensions, weren't there?" "From who?" Sarah demanded, glaring at him. "Because as far as I know, we've always handled disagreements privately and professionally. Unlike what's happening right now, the tension could have been cut with a knife." Andy hesitated, but pride pushed him to keep going. "All I'm saying is maybe the show wasn't perfect. Maybe some of the criticism is valid." Sarah suddenly stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. The sound made the audience gasp. "You want to talk about imperfection? Let's talk about this interview," she snapped. "Or the poor choice your producers made, turning what should have been a professional appearance into a public humiliation." "Sarah, please, sit down," Andy said quickly, his voice trembling slightly. "We're just talking." "No, we're not," she said, standing tall. "You're not talking, you're performing. You're using me to make headlines. You're using my legacy as your punching bag." "Your legacy?" Andy repeated mockingly. "It's a TV show, Sarah, not Shakespeare." The audience gasped again. Sarah's expression went from shock to disbelief. "You call it presumptuous to take pride in something that gave people joy? Something that helped women see themselves in new ways?" Andy shrugged. "Or maybe it just recycled old ideas. Maybe Carrie was just another woman obsessed with love and men." Sarah's voice trembled, but her eyes blazed with fury. "That's such a lazy, sexist take. You're reducing years of complex storytelling into a stereotype. That says everything about your bias, Andy." Andy frowned, defensive now. "Oh, so anyone who criticizes you is a sexist?" "What's sexist?" Sarah fired back, "is pretending to support women while tearing one down on live TV. That's what's happening here." Andy tried to stay composed. "I'm just asking questions about art, culture, and meaning." "Art and meaning?" Sarah said bitterly. "You've spent the last 20 minutes mocking my work, implying my cast hated me, and insulting what we built. That's not art criticism. That's cruelty." The room was so silent that every breath could be heard. The audience didn't move. The camera operators stood frozen, waiting for a signal that never came. Andy finally sighed. "Look, maybe things got a little tense. Why don't we move on to your new project? That's why you're here." Sarah looked at him with disbelief. "Now you want to talk about my project? After everything you've said? You think we can just pretend none of this happened?" "Sarah, this is live TV," Andy said weakly. "Things happen. We're professionals," Sarah laughed coldly. "Professionals? This is what you call professional? After everything I've done to support your show, this is how you repay that trust?" "They weren't attacks," Andy said quickly. "They were fair questions." "Fair questions?" Sarah repeated. "You mean gossip dressed up as journalism?" "I know the difference." The silence stretched until Andy said quietly, "I think you're overreacting." That was the breaking point. "Standard interview questions don't involve tearing down someone's entire career," Sarah snapped. "They don't involve humiliating your guest for ratings." "Sarah, please," Andy said softly. "Let's calm down." "No," she said firmly. "I'm done pretending this is okay. I came here to talk about my work, my craft, my passion. Instead, I've been attacked. This isn't conversation, it's cruelty. Andy tried one last time. Sarah, don't do this. Sarah turned toward him, calm but cold. There's nothing left to fix here. You've made your intentions clear. With that, she turned and walked toward the edge of the stage. The sharp sound of her heels echoed across the silent studio. The audience watched in stunned disbelief. Where are you going? Andy called out, his voice cracking slightly. Sarah paused, turned back, and said clearly, I'm going somewhere people understand the difference between honesty and cruelty. Somewhere my work is respected, not mocked. Then she walked off, leaving Andy Cohen sitting speechless at his desk, the studio frozen, and millions at home stunned. The camera lingered on Andy's stunned expression before cutting to commercial, but the damage was already done. What was supposed to be a routine interview had become one of the most unforgettable, explosive moments in talk show history. So, what do you think truly caused this confrontation? Was Andy Cohen just doing his job, or did he cross a line that should never be crossed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more unbelievable Hollywood stories.